Halo Infinite was supposed to be the return of one of the biggest franchises in all first person shooters. At least the biggest return since Doom 2016. But unlike Doom 2016, Halo has had other installments in between even after development shifted from Bungie to 343, and while the likes of Reach, Halo 4, ODST, and even 5 have garnered somewhat of a cult classic following, Halo as a franchise never quite recaptured the mainstream glory of the early Xbox 360 days. I'm not saying Reach and 4 weren't successful, they were massively successful, but by the early 2010s with the likes of Call of Duty, Mass Effect, Borderlands, and Far Cry, back when Far Cry was actually good, Halo wasn't getting the same critical acclaim. Sure, you could correctly argue that Halo 1 and 2 had laid the foundation for those franchises to rise, just as early Doom and Quake had done for Halo, but the fact remains that no other Halo title has eclipsed Halo 3 in total units sold. That last bit was actually a bit surprising to me considering that gaming as a whole has gotten bigger and bigger over the last 20 years since Halo 1 launched. But as someone who kind of stopped paying attention after Halo 3, I was really looking forward to Halo Infinite and how they were going to bring the franchise into the modern era of gaming. Now, I am a PS5 owner, so my experience with Halo will be from the PC perspective, but that's why I go with PlayStation consoles anyways. I can get all the Xbox exclusives through PC. But the core of this review will be with Halo Infinite as an overall experience and how it tries to find its place in the massive sea of gaming. Halo Infinite has had a troubled development, being delayed a whole year after the Xbox Series X launch, and while that was the correct move, playing this game kind of reflects some of those development troubles. Before I get to that though, let me talk about the things I really enjoyed first. This is a review of Halo Infinite as a whole, campaign and multiplayer. Gameplay-wise, Halo Infinite is excellent and really shines in campaign mode specifically. Weapons feel mostly balanced, but the gunplay works well overall and offers a decent variety to approaching each fight. The grapple hook, however, is really what brings it all together, and it's just plain old fun. Fun, remember fun? Video games weren't work? Anyways, you can grapple enemies, grapple to far-reaching places, grapple coils to throw back at enemies, grapple weapons, grapple grenades. It really opens up combat and traversal with a single mechanic, which I will praise 343 on. That's not an easy thing to do. Sure, putting vehicles in places the game designers didn't exactly want you to put them is a classic Halo staple, and of course they help with traversal. But the grapple hook not only adds speed and mobility, it adds complexity to gameplay the right way. I played on Heroic, so I'm not exactly a top tier Halo vet. I can handle myself in almost any game though, but some of the things people are doing and putting into the Halo subreddit almost reminds me of Breath of the Wild. Almost. Look, the grapple made sense considering Halo Infinite takes more of an Ubisoft-esque approach to an open world, where you are placed in this wide area, go to points on the map, beat out some enemies, and unlock a base that gives you points of interest in the surrounding area. But even with all of that, it's actually a little bland. As far as the open map goes, there actually isn't much variety to anything you do. You go, you shoot, you find cores to upgrade either your grapple, armor, deployable shield, enemy sensor, or your dash. To be honest here, the deployable shield is basically only useful during main storyline missions because they're literally all go to a location, travel down some corridors with enemies, fight a boss, repeat. The internet can and does have an endless debate on what makes a gameplay loop good and rewarding, but for me, besides just having fun shooting things, there needs to be some motivator that changes something in my experience to continue finding things, like world building lore through gameplay, interesting characters and locations that provide some tweak in your abilities to open up how you approach the sandbox world, or even a compelling storyline. Unfortunately, Halo's campaign falls short of pretty much all of those things for me. And if you don't care about multiplayer, there's literally no reason to go find the Mjolnir armor lockers that only are useful for multiplayer. Now, before you mention the skulls, and I know that people do skull runs with all of them activated, those are more like gameplay modifiers rather than actual elements and gameplay mechanics implemented into the game itself that adjusts how you play the game, but that's just me. And when you consider that a full-priced game hasn't shipped with co-op, a feature 343 promises is coming as a free update for the campaign, yeah, the troubled development creeps back up and you directly feel that impact. As far as the graphics go, there really isn't much to write home about here. It doesn't look bad by any means, but there also isn't really much here that tells me, wow, this is a next-gen game. Although the character models are just okay, they could probably use a little bit more work. But before I get into the story and explain my statement from a few moments ago, I want to talk about gameplay as it relates to multiplayer. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Playing Halo Infinite multiplayer on PC is a bit of a crapshoot. We're talking graphical bugs, netcode issues, weird melee hitboxes, and memory leaks. There are plenty of people that aren't really running into a ton of issues, and that's cool. When Halo multiplayer works for me, it's fun for a few matches. But you can't discount that there are people having issues. Even then, paired that with an expanding but still in progress game mode variety and not a ton of real customization options for custom matches with your friends, I just think there's a ton of potential with this game that is being held up by development. For me, however, my single biggest complaint is going from campaign to multiplayer. It's simply a downgraded experience in gameplay, particularly because of, you guessed it, the grapple hook. Look, I kind of get why 343 doesn't just give everyone the grapple hook in multiplayer, but I also kind of don't get it. Like, at least put it on a large cooldown so it works like a special ability, and that would be cool, but man, it immediately breaks your gameplay experience, particularly on the big team battle maps when I can actually load into one on PC, speaking of netcode issues. Funny enough, while I wish Halo Infinite had more multiplayer maps, it actually provides way more environmental variety than the campaign ever did, but to me, it just further drives my point about this being an incomplete experience. As far as rank goes, it is polarizing and definitely needs some work in my opinion. I can't quite put my finger on it since I don't really care for grinding out a ranked multiplayer mode these days, but it seems like it both rewards playing objectives but also cares more about KD. The way players are placed into their rankings just feels a little bit chaotic, and then that leads to chaotic matches. If this is your cup of tea, cool. It's not so much for me, so I'm not going to hold this game mode for or against Halo Infinite. Competitive play is almost an entirely different category for most games anyways. And then we get to the Battle Pass and the online store. I really appreciate that 343 is listening to the player base, I do, but they're making a ton of money nickel and diming simple color coding. And then if you do decide to buy an armor pack with a unique color scheme, you can't change individual parts to them. It's all or nothing on those. That just leaves a sour flavor in my mouth when even other multiplayer and Royale games allow you to adjust your weapon skins through gameplay in a feasible amount of time. Stuff like the cat ears I think is perfect for what the multiplayer shop should be, but weapon skins and armor coatings, that's a tough sell for me. And then the campaign story. Spoiler warning if you haven't beat the game, I'm going in. So, as I have mentioned early in this video, I only played Halo 1 through 3, and this is my first installment back into the franchise. But my goodness that I simply not care at all about the story. All the major events the game wants you to care about happens off screen. Lore is told to you in audio logs you find throughout the map that you barely even pay attention to because you're playing the game. I mean, at least they aren't thesis long walls of text you have to read through, but man, nothing like being told what happened in the game that you're actively playing. It's actually quite disappointing because regular enemies actually have great voice acting and dialogue, banter that keeps the game light and fun. Weapon, Chief's new AI companion, has a great quirky cadence that I actually enjoyed for the most part.
Is there a problem?
Of course not.
But then the rest of the main cast's writing is not good. The big bad in Atriox is introduced to you right away, giving you a simple, basic motivator to go after right at the beginning of the game, only to find out immediately that he's dead. And instead you're pitted against Escharum, whose writing is mustache trolling villain levels bad. I don't mind that after you defeat him, Chief states how he was just a soldier on the opposite side trying to do what he believed was right, but almost nothing throughout the game reflects that sentiment. It's really odd. On the same coin, I don't mind the humanizing of Master Chief, but it's hard to pull off when the gameplay takes you down the badass get done Doomslayer protagonist route. It's jarring to do all of that and then in cutscenes try to humanize his actions on a character with no face. Credit to Steve Downes, the voice actor for Chief, because his delivery is believable, but everything else around not so much. Oh, and then Weapon is a clone of Cortana, whom actually is the one who killed Atriox while also self-destructing in the process in an effort to right the wrongs of previous installments. So almost like retconning 343's Cortana from previous titles. And then at the very end, the Harbinger introduces this new enemy called the Endless that apparently you should be worried about too. I don't know. Oh, but wait, in a post-endgame scene, Atriox is still actually alive. Maybe I'm being hard on the story, and I don't think it's like Kingdom Hearts level of convoluted, but the kind of, but not really, but yes, romance between Chief and whatever fresh new model of AI is odd, and the story is just odd. I'm sure more hardcore Halo fans will disagree with me, and that's fine, but this is my review and it didn't do it for me. All in all, Halo Infinite, despite its flaws, is still a fun game driven by its gameplay mechanics that I would still have no problems recommending to anyone, even if it doesn't do for the franchise what Doom 2016 did for, well, Doom. As time goes on and the game gets updated, getting this game at a discount will be a huge value, particularly when co-op is launched, and will still be a fun time. It's not a game of the year level candidate, but hopefully the groundwork has been laid for a future installment to take it back to that height. I give Halo Infinite a 3 out of 5.